This is episode 8 of Entrepreneurs for a Change. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to our mailing list at entrepreneursforachange.com.
Are you ready to be the change? If so, you've come to the right place. You are about to join a movement of entrepreneurs who are empowering people, saving the planet, and turning their passion into profits while creating the lifestyle of their dreams. If you don't believe us, check out our website at entrepreneursforachange.com, a place where you can be inspired, mentored, and supported by a tribe of change-making entrepreneurs just like you.
Hello, beautiful changemakers, and happy holidays. We're here today with Darian Rodriguez Heyman, a social innovator with a long history of building businesses and creating community. Darian's the Chief Development Officer for Better World Wireless, the first mission-driven telecom company, aiming to simultaneously serve U.S. nonprofits and donate 1 million smartphones to moms, teachers, and farmers within the next 10 years. He's the co-founder of Social Media for Nonprofits, a conference series devoted to strategies and tactics around using social media for social good. For many years, Darian served as the executive director of Craigslist Foundation, where he helped launch their nonprofit boot camp and educated and inspired over 10,000 nonprofit leaders. His best-selling book, Nonprofit Management 101, a complete and practical guide for leaders and professionals, includes practical tips and tools from 50 recognized experts across 35 comprehensive topics. Darian's going to share with us what it takes to herd Jaguars to create a groundbreaking work for social change. Why taking a 6-month sabbatical is a great way to check out while checking in. How to dream your dreams with open eyes so you can make your dreams come true. Why doing less can actually be the key to making a bigger impact in the world. And how to be that nonprofit that empowers people in lasting ways rather than enables a culture of handouts. Now, before we hop into the interview, I want to announce a change in the format of this podcast show. Our mindset hacks and practical tools are going to become a video series next year, so stay tuned.
Now, before diving into the interview, I want to encourage you to rate, review, and download Entrepreneurs for a Change on iTunes. This really helps us reach more people with inspiring stories of entrepreneurs who are changing the world. Also, if these stories inspire you to start a world-changing business of your own, head over to our website at entrepreneursforachange.com and download the Business Changemakers Toolkit to get a jumpstart today. Now on to the show. So hey there, Darian. I'm so glad that you're here with us today to join me for this interview. It's been many years since I last worked with you, and I'm so glad to have the opportunity to finally catch up. I remember when you and I first met, you were gathering ideas to launch the Craigslist Foundation nonprofit boot camp. And at that time, I was working with Natural World Museum and Social Fusion, which was a social venture incubator. I would love to find out more about your background and what led you to lead up the Craigslist Foundation.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me, Lorna. It's really good to reconnect, and it has indeed been a while. Just really quickly, think of myself as kind of a dot-com refugee. I started and sold one of the first internet advertising agencies back in the dot-com days, right out of college. Phenomenal experience, and we grew the company to almost 400 people in 28 countries. But when the bubble burst after we had sold the company, we went through some pretty difficult layoffs, as a lot of companies did, and I kind of realized that what I thought was a family was really a business. And I think it's important to bear in mind that I was the only co-founder out of 4 that didn't marry an employee. And we had 22 married couples come out of that company. So it was very tight-knit, to say the least. And so, I wound up taking a sabbatical and going traveling around the world for 6 months. And while I was doing that, I really made a pretty firm decision in terms of the direction I wanted to take my life in, to sort of use my powers for good. And I decided to dedicate myself and my life to philanthropy and to the arts. And that's part of what led me to do some work with Natural World Museum, which is how we got to collaborate on World Environment Day. But it's also what led me to restart the Craigslist Foundation, and in particular, the nonprofit boot camp. And for me, I think the idea was really, how could I make the most positive impact possible? The personal mission statement that I came up with while I was traveling was all about maximizing my sphere of positive influence, and kind of have this epiphany that everything we do or don't do creates change, and that's truly the nature of life, so that it this change emanates from us in all directions, like the ripple in the pond, but actually spherical in 3 dimensions. And so knowing that, how can we harness that and really contribute to significant and sustainable social progress? And so for me, Craigslist was really an opportunity to partner with a hugely well-regarded and well-known platform that a lot of people, especially in the Bay Area, know and love, and to take something that was very idealistic and apply it to an even more idealistic landscape like the nonprofit sector. And so rather than steer them towards supporting one individual cause or organization like foundations traditionally do, for me, Craigslist doesn't really play favorites. And so applying their kind of egalitarian approach to people helping people to the nonprofit space, I came up with this focus on helping people help and really connecting emerging leaders, the little guys, with the resources that they need to build a better world. And that's what Nonprofit Bootcamp was all about. It was really successful. Over the 5 years I was there, we had over 10,000 graduates, 92 to 100% approval ratings. It was the largest nonprofit gathering in Bay Area history within a year of its inception, and just a really transformative event here in New York. And so the book I just put out, Nonprofit Management 101, really builds on the relationships and the knowledge that I gained in that experience. And it features 50 different authors across 35 topics. So it's very much like Bootcamp as a book, and it's kind of trying to take this approach to being very comprehensive and at the same time really practical, which is what Bootcamp was all about.
Wait, so how long were you with the Craigslist Foundation?
I was there 5 years.
And when did you leave?
2009, so 2004 to 2009.
So then after you left Craigslist Foundation in 2009, where did your path take you?
Well, I had also become a commissioner for the environment for the city and county of San Francisco, so I was pretty active in the whole green economy space, helped pass what at the time was the largest solar rebate program in the country. And so I actually went on another sabbatical, took another 6 months to travel the world and decide kind of what I wanted to do next, and really decided that I wanted to focus more on the green economy space, but also kind of put a bookend, literally and figuratively, on my time at Craigslist Foundation. So I put together this book project. We had actually had a proposal from Wiley, Josie Bass, which is the largest nonprofit publisher, to do a nonprofit bootcamp book, but we just didn't have the capacity to take that on at Craigslist Foundation. So when I left, I got the board's permission and blessing to do that as a solo project. It really helped to put the details together while I was traveling, and also decided that I wanted to focus more on the green economy space and started doing a lot of work with the UN Environment Program, speaking for them at different summits around the world and helping to facilitate some green economy gatherings. And then came back and really started this renewed focus on nonprofit and environmental consulting and working with mission-led organizations to help them with strategy, messaging, and fundraising.
So this book project came into its inception while you were still at Craigslist or just transitioning away. Is that what turned into the Nonprofit Management 101 book that you just launched?
Exactly. Yeah. So, while I was traveling, I was thinking through, who are the different authors? What are the different topics? How did we want to structure it in terms of the table of contents? What was the consistent chapter format so that it would be more readable? There's kind of a set format where all of the chapters start with a sort of overview, then really focus on critical skills and competencies, have a sidebar of do's and don'ts, a conclusion, and every chapter has a resource review for more information. So the idea is that even though it's a pretty big book, it is comprehensive, so it's about 700 pages, but it's very modular, so you can read each chapter in 20 minutes. So if you just want to know about how to raise money from foundations or CRM or nonprofit finances or board governance, etc., you can read just that one chapter.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed by how large this book is. It seems like quite an endeavor. How long does it take to create a book of that magnitude?
It was a couple-year project. It was definitely a lot of heavy lifting. I joke around in a lot of the facilitation work that I do and say that it's not about herding the cats, it's about herding the Jaguars. And so for me, the book project was a really great opportunity to work with some amazing people like Paul Hawken and Lynn Twist and Beth Cantor, Ami Dar from Idealist, and lots of industry luminaries, and to help kind of guide and direct them towards this aim of practical tips and tools. And that's really kind of a theme in all the nonprofit management work I've done at Craigslist Foundation with the bootcamp, with this book, with the Social Media for Nonprofits conference series I'm doing now. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there talking about concepts and theory and basically how to think about an issue. But what I found the community leaders really need are the actual tangible tools, the actionable insights that they can put to work immediately and make them more effective and efficient in the work they're already doing.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that, while the book is almost 700 pages, it seems to be almost entirely written by other people, which is amazingly brilliant from an execution standpoint. Was it fairly easy to round up that group of change-making luminaries? And what was that process like? Was that the easiest part or the most difficult?
It was a lot of work. I mean, there's 50 different authors, so anytime you try and get 50 people to do anything, it's going to be difficult, especially when there's some really accomplished and dynamic figures that have a lot to say. So, there were some folks that colored outside the lines, and I had to work with them to kind of get their chapters into the consistent structure so the book would be as readable as possible. There were some folks that, it didn't work out, but on the whole, I'm really glad with where we wound up at the end of the day in terms of how the book turned out. And yeah, so it was absolutely a process. I did do, quite a bit of writing myself. I did an intro to the book, to each of the 7 sections, closing thoughts, and then I also edited the whole thing. So I went through every page of every chapter several times and gave the writer's feedback in terms of directional, but also, focusing on those practical tips and tools. So yeah, it was quite a bit of work, but it was a really great opportunity while I was, outside of my full-time employment and traveling around the world to put some time and some thought into really encapsulating all the relationships and the knowledge I gained while I was at Craigslist Foundation.
I love the whole concept of taking 6-month sabbaticals, traveling around the world in order to just kind of get into a clear space, to have the space to reflect on all the great things that you've accomplished in the past. Really appreciate yourself for all the hard work that you've done, and to be able to be open to new ideas. What do you like to do when you go off on these sabbaticals? Do you go and just travel freely, or do you actually go and try to associate yourself with a project or try to learn a new discipline?
I guess it's kind of a little bit of everything. I mean, I almost think of it as is kind of lean into the universe, as a serial social entrepreneur that's used to building up organizations from nothing. And in particular, someone who beyond just being an executive, it tends to be in the sales, fundraising, business development kind of rainmaker role. I tend to be in a role, or I put myself in a role where I'm responsible for the livelihood of everyone around me. And while that's tremendously rewarding, it can also be draining, especially over time, and especially when the economy gets kind of rough. So for me, when I travel, it's a great opportunity to just kind of not be responsible for myself and other people. And, I like to travel without a guidebook, without an itinerary, not necessarily know where I'm going to sleep the next night, and, just have a backpack and travel around and meet people, ask them what the coolest things they've seen are, and then just kind of go. And the mantra that I like to embrace while I'm on the road is embracing serendipity. And so for me, it's an opportunity to just kind of, experience the world and its people, sample the cuisine, sample the cultural sites, and really just see what comes and travel pretty lightly, but be prepared for just about anything. And I find that it's incredibly reinvigorating, and it just allows me to sort of check out but check in with myself at the same time. And in so doing, I tend to, at some point get to a moment where I find some pretty significant clarity. So I almost think of it as epiphany hunting, if you will.
I love checking out to check in. I'm actually just on the verge of going on my own sabbatical, so I feel like I kind of really resonate with you on that. I'm so excited. Where did you go last?
I was all over. I was in 14 countries. So I started out in Latin America, then I was in the Middle East, and finally in Western Europe and Morocco. So it was all over the place, from Cuba to Turkey to Peru to, you name it.
Wow, very exciting. So going back to all your Rainmaker stuff, I think it's really great that you're one of those people that can influence a lot of other people that have the ability to make things happen and also have resources. But at the same time, what I'm even more impressed by is the massive volunteer support that you guys were able to get to rally behind Craigslist Foundation. I mean, most organizations can't even find a handful of volunteers. I'd love to hear some of your, advice or best practices on how an organization can do this and achieve the massive success that you guys have.
So I think, to be fair, it's important to recognize that, Craigslist Foundation carries this tremendous brand behind it. I mean, Craigslist is one of the top 10 websites on the internet. And more importantly, I think it has kind of a cult following because it really represents a different way, a different model of capitalism, if you will, that's very community driven. And so there were, we had to literally turn dozens of people away that would have loved to have volunteered for us. So it's not necessarily a typical nonprofit story, especially since now I've worked with thousands of groups, and most people don't realize that 75% of all nonprofits have budgets underneath $75,000. So there's a lot of mom and pops, a lot of small startups that are grassroots organizations doing really good work. And for me, I think the most important thing to remember, one of my favorite quotes is Goethe said, "Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid." And I think that one of the key things is, or I would say two key things. One is the importance of painting a picture. And rather than thinking that people are going to support your efforts, whether it's financially or with their time, the way I've heard Kay Sprinkle Grace, one of the authors in my book, put it is that people don't give to you because you have needs, but because you meet needs. And so it's really about mapping their contribution to impact and helping people understand that by supporting your efforts, you're basically acting as a conduit to achieve some kind of change that they want to see in the world. And I think that's a really crucial issue. And the other side of the coin is this notion of sort of dreaming your dreams with open eyes in order to make them come true. And this is a concept where all too often we're sort of so busy reacting and responding to whatever stimulus is thrown at us, whether that's someone who wants to volunteer or another partnership opportunity, that we don't sort of proactively take the time to envision what is it that we want to do. I kind of think of intention as be careful where you point that thing, because life is really a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so the concept is, if you're looking to bring on volunteers, you should have a job description, even though you're not paying them. And you should really take the time to map out what are the duties and responsibilities, what are the requirements, how is this relationship going to work, who's going to manage them, etc. So all of those things are thought through ahead of time. And once you bring that kind of mindfulness to your work, amazing things become possible. And for me, that's a big part of why I take these sabbaticals, is it gives me an opportunity to sort of take a step back and think about what I want instead of just react to what comes.
Yeah, I really love that. I think there's a lot to be said about the law of attraction, especially when it comes to social change work. I think it's so important because a lot of us do social change work not for a paycheck. It's because we are trying to be a positive impact. We are moved by what we see in the world, and we want it to be a better place. And so for a lot of us, the work is also not only external, it's very much internal.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the theme that I see a lot of, one of the most common pieces of advice I give nonprofits is do less. And I think the idea is that, just based on the very fact that we're working in this sector, whether it's nonprofit or social enterprise or any kind of philanthropic initiative, that by definition makes you a compassionate person that wants to make the world a better place. And, although it's a bit sad to admit, the reality is there's no shortage of problems that need fixing in the world. And so if we allow ourselves to be distracted and essentially dilute our efforts by chasing after every shiny object, every opportunity to serve, while in some ways that is laudable, in other ways it does dilute our efforts and it minimizes or at least diminishes the possible impact that we can have. And so for me, I think the question is really about leverage and it's about focus. And, if you could only do one thing, what's the one thing that you want to do? What's the one thing that you're prepared to be the best at the world at? And what's the one thing that you can really make a unique difference at?
Yeah, so speaking about impact, so going back to maximizing impact, I found it really interesting that you just mentioned 75% of nonprofits operate with less than $75,000. So I'm kind of curious as to the whole way that nonprofits are able to make so much more happen with so little. Like there's definitely an art to it. And I see, having been in the nonprofit sector, having been in the for-profit sector, that while a lot of nonprofits are able to achieve miracles through the force of passion and goodwill, at the same time, nonprofits often have the stigma of being inefficient in financial management, in organizational strategy, in operational efficiency, especially when you're looking at it through the lens of the for-profit sector, the business sector. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people criticize criticize the charitable sector as enabling a culture of handouts or being destructive of local industries. And a very classic example is, the really well-intentioned donation of mosquito nets to combat the spread of malaria in African countries and how that ends up just destroying the local mosquito net industry. So what are your thoughts about all this, and how do you not become one of those nonprofits?
Well, I think that there's a couple different issues that you're bringing up. One of the sort of classic mistakes that larger and international nonprofits tend to make in international development work is kind of this top-down approach to philanthropy, where as opposed to going into a village and asking them what kind of help they need, we sort of take this culturally imperialistic approach to saying, oh, you poor thing, you just had, an earthquake. Let me come help you by building houses that look just like the row houses in my neighborhood. And people ultimately don't want that. I think the important thing to realize is that very few people in this world see themselves as victims. Even though we may, they don't necessarily think of themselves in that way. And I work with organizations like Kiva.org. These people that they're helping are not victims. They are just looking for a hand up instead of a handout. And so, the other thing is with some of the work I've done with the Gandhi Ashram, I've been to Ahmedabad in India and the state of Gujarat where there was a massive earthquake and racial riots and all these problems. And what did the international development community do? But exactly what I just said. They came in, they built these, huts that were Western style. And I saw people living in the streets right outside these huts. They were totally empty because they weren't built to the sort of cultural specifications of the locals. And I think that happens a lot, whether it's in Haiti, whether it's with the tsunami in Japan, et cetera. And we really need to make sure that we're working in partnership with local industry, with local citizens, with local governments, to really kind of build the community in the world that they want to see happen if we are to truly serve.
So can you give me some examples of extremely efficient, high-impact, innovative nonprofits you've come across?
As it relates to the nonprofit sector, there's a huge need for business acumen. And I won't be one of those people that say the nonprofit sector needs to be more business-like, because in many ways the for-profit sector needs to be more nonprofit-like. But what I will say is I once heard that as a rule, as a generalization, the nonprofit sector is overled and undermanaged. And I find that to be very true. We have a lot of charismatic, dynamic, visionary leaders that can paint a beautiful picture, get folks excited, recruit resources and money and personnel, and boldly proceed towards a vision. But when it comes time to operationalize that vision and build out the, key systems, and whether that's performance indicators, whether that's, any of the things that we may learn in business school, a lot of those tend to be absent in the nonprofit world. And so there's a huge opportunity, whether it's through people with business backgrounds working in the sector, or just volunteering their time through groups like Taproot Foundation or Full Circle Fund, or joining a board, which is something that I'd recommend. And so the point is, I don't believe in this concept of slacktivism where, if you just click to sign a petition or like a cause, that should be discounted. For me, it's all good and it all helps. And people interact with different causes in different ways at different times in different contexts. And so if something speaks to you and you want to get involved, then get involved in whatever way you feel most comfortable. And if you feel so called to join the sector and to take a leadership role and take a full-time engagement at a nonprofit, then that's wonderful. And if you'd rather do it as a volunteer, a board member, or any other kind of advisor, then that's wonderful as well. And like I said, we need all the help we can get.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. This is Lorna Li, the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneurs for a Change. And we were just with Darian Heyman, who is a .com refugee who led up Craigslist Foundation and launched the wildly successful nonprofit bootcamp. He's currently a nonprofit and environmental consultant and the author of the book, Nonprofit Management 101. To find out more about Darian, go to socialmediafornonprofits.org. That's social media, 4, nonprofits.org, or nonprofits101.org. Thank you. Thanks, folks, for listening to the Entrepreneurs for a Change podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us reach more people with inspiring stories like this one by giving us a 5-star rating in iTunes. If this podcast inspires you to join the movement of change-making entrepreneurs, we'd love to give you a jumpstart with our free Business Changemakers Toolkit, which you can download at www.entrepreneursforachange.com/join. If you have a changemaker in mind you'd love for us to interview, go to entrepreneursforachange.com/suggest and tell us who and why. Finally, feel free to stop by facebook.com/entrepreneurs for a change to share your thoughts and say hello.